Story 1. When I had my near-death experience, it didn't feel like it had a clear beginning. It was like suddenly waking up and realizing what was happening around me. During my NDE, everything was pitch black and I couldn't think or reason at all. I didn't even wonder where I was. It was like watching a movie. But I was also a part of it. I didn't have any thoughts, I was just observing everything that was happening. These scenes all happened at once, not one after the other. It's really hard to explain. There were 3 scenes that I remember. I can't recall the exact order, but I think it started with my dad sitting in a wheelchair at a retirement home. He had a blanket over his legs and was wearing round glasses like John Lennon. When I looked into his glasses, all I saw was darkness, like a complete emptiness. Next, I saw a friend who had passed away the year before. He had a staff in his hand and looked a bit like Moses, with his white hair blowing in the wind. He told me, "You're getting another chance." Then the vision disappeared for a while. I don't know how long it was. It could have felt like a second or a whole year. Time didn't make sense anymore. The 3rd vision was the most memorable one. I found myself in a void where there was no light, sound, or anything. Somehow I was given a choice. I don't know who or what gave me that choice. It was more like I just knew it was there. If I chose to go to the right, I knew there would be peace and calmness. I could feel it. On the left side was my life, which seemed like a road full of broken glass. I thought about my wife and decided that I wasn't ready to go to the right just yet. As soon as I thought about my family, I felt a strong physical jolt. It was a very real sensation, completely different from everything I had experienced so far. The next part is really hard to explain, but I'll try my best to explain what happened. It was like this sudden jolt, and I just knew deep down that it was something from God. It was as if I could feel a connection to everything in the whole universe, past, present, and future. I could see how everything is connected, the space and reality around us. Like I was part of this amazing creation and felt so connected to it. It's weird, but I associate the color purple with this experience, even though I don't know why. After that jolt, I heard what I thought was my wife's voice calling me, so I followed it. It felt like I was lost in the dark, but I found my way back to the real world. Around the time I had this experience, the doctors told my wife that I might not make it. They said even if I did survive, I would be in a vegetative state and need constant care. My wife, who is more religious than me, went to the chapel to pray because the doctors said it might be time to let me go. It had been weeks and I still hadn't woken up. But then, while my wife was just sitting there, a doctor came in and told her that I opened my eyes. She rushed into my room and found me kind of awake. I don't remember much, but I told her about what I had experienced and how I saw a vision of my dad in a nursing home. It turns out my dad, who had disowned me because of his wife, was actually put in a nursing home by her. I had no idea about this. Sadly, my dad passed away a few days ago, and now his wife is being cruel and not letting us have his body. But it's really strange that I saw him in my experience. I can't remember a lot of the details, and my near-death experience, NDE, wasn't as organized as I made it sound. It was super clear and didn't feel like a dream at all. It felt as real as the scar on my chest. I actually felt like I was being touched by God, but it wasn't like what any religion talks about. It was more like becoming one with everything in the universe and feeling a perfect connection with everything that exists. It was way deeper than the idea of someone sitting on a cloud and judging people for what they do. When I think back to being in the intensive care unit, ICU, I only remember bits and pieces, and it's not as clear as my NDE. I was really confused about where I was when I had my heart attack. I thought I was in Florida celebrating Thanksgiving while my wife was having a medical procedure. Later, I realized that the white decorations in the ICU reminded me of Florida, and the busy doctors made me think they were taking care of my wife. I found out later that my whole family and my wife's family came to the hospital on Thanksgiving because they thought I was going to die. Somehow I just knew they were there, having Thanksgiving dinner. I have a memory of watching one of my nephews eating pumpkin pie. I have no clue how or where I saw that, but I remember it. The next day was when everything crazy happened to me. I had these visions and almost died, but luckily I woke up afterwards. I didn't end up with any brain damage or long-term problems from my heart attack and the surgery that followed. While I was getting better, I just felt this strong urge to tell everyone about what I went through. At the same time, I felt really guilty for not treating my wife like the amazing person she is. She never left my side during visiting hours. I finally realized how lucky I am and made peace with my dad before he passed away. It's hard to explain, but I think about what I saw and felt all the time. It's like trying to describe a breathtaking sunset to someone who has never seen anything in their life. There are no words that can truly capture what I experienced. This story was shared by James M. and happened in 2019. Story 2. It was like everything was moving in slow motion. I slipped into the water without making a sound and kept my eyes wide open. Slowly, I started sinking down, noticing how quiet it was around me. I couldn't swim, but strangely, I felt completely safe and calm. This feeling stayed with me even though I knew I was about to drown. I tried to push myself up from the bottom of the sea to reach the surface, but accidentally hit my head on the bottom of the raft. Suddenly, everything went black, and time seemed to stop. It didn't feel like a dream. Instead, it felt like a real and vivid experience. I knew I was in the water at the harbor, under the raft. I didn't breathe, but I also didn't hold my breath. I knew I might be close to dying, but I wasn't worried at all. It was the safest I had ever felt. Then, I saw a bright angel-like man behind me and to the right. It was surprising to be able to see him, even though he was outside my field of vision in this experience. The angel spoke to me in a comforting male voice and called me by my nickname, Kuka. His presence made me feel incredibly calm. Somehow, I knew he was my guardian angel, even though I had never heard of guardian angels before. Right in front of me, a massive movie reel popped up out of nowhere, and an angel made out of light showed me my whole life, from the day I was born until the moment I jumped into the water. It was like watching a fast-forward version of my life, but with all the important parts. Every now and then, the movie would stop. It was because of all the times I did something bad and felt super guilty about it. I lied a few times and even stole a few things. The angel explained to me why those things were wrong and how they affected other people. It was an important lesson. Towards the end, the angel started telling me that my life had a special meaning, and that I had to go through certain things to follow this plan that was meant just for me. I felt like I recognized the angel, but I couldn't remember from where. When the movie reached the part where I jumped into the water, it suddenly stopped. I was so curious to see more, because there was still a lot of tape left on the reel. So I asked the angel if I could keep watching. He smiled at me in the most comforting way and said, "No, you have to go back to the real world. You're going to be healing sick people and doing music. That's what you're meant to do in your life." I really didn't want to leave this amazing place. It was so full of love and wonder. But the angel, in the kindest way possible, told me I had to go. And then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, there was a man sitting right next to me on a raft. I was having trouble breathing, and I could see that my face and hair were all gross and covered in seawater. But even though I almost drowned, I felt great. I started wondering where my friend Peter was, and that's when the guy told me that another boy had actually saved me. He reached under the raft, grabbed my hair, and pulled me out of the water. This man helped me pull myself up onto the raft. I was lifeless for a while, and he thought I was gone. But surprisingly, I'm alive and grinning at him, and he's totally confused. I was feeling this crazy happiness because an angel showed me that fear isn't real. Then it hit me how serious the situation was. I was scared that if my parents found out, I'd be in big trouble and not allowed to hang out with my friend Peter anymore. So I hopped off the raft as quick as lightning and ran down the trail. Peter showed up with these sticky fishing nets and quietly joined me. He ran away too because he was scared I might be dead. He didn't want to get in trouble. Peter saw the guy giving me CPR and was so relieved and happy when he saw me wake up. We headed home but stopped along the way to dry my clothes on a fence. Peter kept bragging about how he heroically pulled me out of the water by my hair. He wasn't looking when I jumped off, so he thought I disappeared out of nowhere. He searched for me for a while, even jumped on the raft and stuck his head in the water. Turns out, I was hiding under the raft the whole time. I was so focused on my encounter with the angel that I couldn't think of anything else. I tried explaining it to Peter, but he didn't really believe me. The fact that I could have died didn't bother me anymore, because now I knew fear wasn't something to be afraid of. Luckily, the sun was shining bright. In just an hour, my clothes were almost dry. But now I had a problem. What should I tell my parents when I got home? Where had I been? Who had I been with? Before we reached home, my friend and I decided to keep today's adventure a secret between us. When I finally got home, trouble awaited me. My mom and dad were freaking out because I hadn't come back in time for dinner. This was really unusual for me. They had called my friend's parents, but no one had seen me. They even called the police, who were on their way to investigate. But then my parents called the police again to cancel the emergency. They were relieved and worried at the same time. They bombarded me with questions. Where had I been? Who had I been with? How could I just stay away like that? I had never done something like this before. They also wondered why my clothes were damp and where my cowboy belt with the toy gun had gone. It was only then that I realized I had lost my cowboy belt. It must have fallen into the sea. I made up a really terrible lie. even though a little voice in my head told me not to. I told my parents that I had been playing alone on the beach and must have lost my cowboy belt there. I was too scared to come home without it, so I searched and searched for it. My mom got really mad at me for losing the belt. That evening, we walked the entire beach together, hoping to find it, but of course we didn't. I felt so guilty for lying, especially because that little voice in my head kept reminding me of what I should have done. It felt like the voice was still watching over me. This experience had a big impact on my life. I talked to my friend Peter about it right after it happened, but it took me several years before I could trust anyone else enough to share what had really happened. This story was shared by Ken D. and happened in 1961.